The Simpsons is almost as old as its perennially late 30s central character, Homer Simpson.
I did not think I would be here 30 years later.
Who knew donuts were such a good anti-aging supplement? The Simpsons have gone from subversive satire to becoming an integral part of the society it parodied.
On The Simpsons, it's a reset, and you can watch the episodes in any order.
It's a pop culture icon that made its reputation skewering pop culture, creating a sort of satireception. With that longevity and popularity, it's also picked up a heaping helping of lore. How deep is your love? How much do you know about Homer, his family, and his crazy hometown of Springfield?
Fun's over, fellas. If you're gonna beat up my friend in my bar, there's a 2-drink minimum.
If you've ever played the Simpsons arcade game, then you might have noticed a few odd quirks in it, and not just the annoying sound that Lisa and Bart make when they use their team-up move. If you played Marge and she got electrocuted or hit particularly hard, for a brief moment you'd catch a hint of rabbit ears under her iconic Busby-style hairdo. Busby is the name of those tall, furry hats that marching bands wear. Now you know a thing. What might seem like a quirk of burnt-out video game coders actually is rooted in creator Matt Groening's weird imagination. Prior to being tasked with creating his animated shorts for The Tracy Ullman Show, Groening had made a name for himself in the fringe comics world with his dark satire Life in Hell, which featured anamorphic rabbits Blinky and Sheba. Originally, Groening was asked to adapt his Life in Hell comics for the Tracy Ullman Show bumpers, but Groening thought that he'd lose control of his characters and pitched a broad parody of his own family instead. But that didn't mean that Groening didn't want to keep it weird. The first season of the show, Groening pitched that Marge would be revealed to be a bunny with her tall hair hiding her long ears. Co-creator and showrunner Sam Simon immediately roadblocked the idea, but the bunny life made its way to the video game anyway. Now there's a clear transition in The Simpsons that marks its transition into its iconic period, and that's when the show shifted its focus from the ill-mannered Bart to the dull-witted Homer Simpson. Homer has managed to transcend the trope of dull-witted father and become something special that has been a formula which has been hard for imitators to match. But just how do they create a selfish, low-watt, lazy oaf who also is at his core good-natured and undeniably likable? Writer for the show John Swartzwelder confirmed former showrunner Mike Reiss's rumored secret sauce to writing Homer Simpson: write him as a talking dog. Swartzwelder told The New Yorker, "He's a big talking dog. One moment he's the saddest man in the world because he's just lost his job or dropped his sandwich or accidentally killed his family. Then the next moment he's the happiest man in the world because he's just found a penny, maybe under one of his dead family members." He's not actually a dog, of course, he's smarter than that. But if you write him as a dog, you'll never go wrong. Well, once he's put into that context, he really does make a lot of sense. The Simpsons' iconic look doesn't stem so much from artistic interpretation as it reflects the relative limits of its creator. Groening himself has joked about his ability to only draw simple characters with big round eyes. Naturally, Groening doesn't actually draw The Simpsons. They have a small team of talented animators and storyboard artists for that. But the character design is dictated by the creator's signature style born of his own limitations. One would think that it's that limitation that makes Homer and Krusty the Clown look so similar. But that was actually more on purpose than it seemed. Another early pitch for The Simpsons was that Krusty the Clown was actually Homer's moonlighting gig, further complicating Homer and Bart's relationship since Bart is hopelessly devoted to Krusty and notoriously dismissive of Homer. In this case, the idea was ditched because in the early Simpsons shorts, there wasn't really the storytelling room for that twist. By season 6, they made use of the character's physical similarity by having Homer take Krusty's clown school for Krusty franchise characters and imitating the clown so well, the Mafia mistakes Homer for the real thing, trying to extract the $48 that Krusty owes them.
Yes, sir?
Do we have to listen to you?
Oh, well, no, you don't. But if you have any interest in history...
I'm done.
When you're creating an alternate comic that runs primarily in free weekly fringe culture papers alongside titles like Zippy the Pinhead, Too Much Coffee Man, and Tom Tomorrow, having a rough artistic style is almost a plus. It's part of the aesthetic. It also means that the artist isn't all that versed in the ways of network production workflow. But The Simpsons was airing on the first new national TV network in a considerable amount of time that was trying to bill itself on a countercultural aesthetic. So, early artists like David Silverman were involved, who was part of the animation culture that spawned things like the Spike and Mike Animation Festival. The same festival that introduced the world to titles like Beavis and Butthead and Ren and Stimpy. So while Groening just assumed that the animators would clean up his character sketches, the animators simply traced his rough drawings and used that to model the rest of the animation. Over time, Groening's crude sketches were in fact smoothed out, creating the distinct differences between early Simpsons and the Simpsons we know now. There have been a lot of reasons that have been given to compound Homer's limited intellect. There's the Simpsons gene that affects male members of the Simpsons line once they hit puberty. And that genetic defect might manifest in Homer's unique cranial makeup, which combines a legitimately thick skull containing also thicker than normal fluid around his brain, which allows him to survive blows to the head. Unless those blows are delivered by someone like Drederick Tatum. Now, despite that thick-headed advantage, Homer has also endured multiple severe head traumas. Then, there's his less-than-stellar upbringing by Abe Simpson after his mom left, fleeing from the FBI. Since the removal meant that Homer went on a bit of a Flowers for Algernon arc, perhaps the biggest culprit is the crayon he shoved up his nose and into his brain as a kid. But there's a more practical reason driving Homer's cognitive difficulties. 33 seasons of writers having to top themselves with Homerisms, pushing Homer further and further down the dim road. Despite that, he's also now and then demonstrated, if not intelligence, then a cleverness that is masked by his more offish moments. Homer has layers. One of the more iconic episodes of The Simpsons' so-called Golden Age is the Flaming Moe episode.
It sure is, Billy. It sure is.
In that episode, Homer introduces his own secret recipe for alcoholic bliss developed to survive a visit from Selma and Patty. The drink involved a collection of alcohol remnants and Krusty's non-narcotic cough syrup, which was lit on fire by a stray cigarette ash, activating the drink's overall alcoholic content. Homer gives the recipe for the Flaming Homer to Moe to help drive business when sales slumps mean that Moe can't pay his Duff delivery bills. In an on-the-fly moment, Moe takes credit for the drink to impress a cocktail waitress based on Diane from Cheers who walked into Moe's. Things steamroll. The drink makes Moe a celebrity who refuses to credit Homer for the exotic mixed cocktail. Fans for a while assumed that the episode was a metaphor for how co-creator Sam Simon's contributions to what The Simpsons became were pushed aside in lieu of all the credit going to Matt Groening.
Matt Groening and
Jim Brooks.
Jim Brooks
developed the show for television. It was incredible. It was like being in the Beatles.
In the story, Simon would be Homer and Moe would be Groening, well-meaning but taken in by the sudden fame. When asked in 2013 about the rumor regarding the secret meaning of the Flaming Moe, Sam Simon replied that it may be true.
That's why it's called a Flaming Moe. What? What are you looking at, Homer? It's a Flaming Moe. I'm Moe.
Now, while Groening's other creations, Futurama and Disenchantment, bear a family resemblance to each other, there is one thing that immediately sets The Simpsons apart: the yellow skin. More than anything else, the yellow has set The Simpsons apart from other animated shows. Turns out, that's entirely by design. The Simpsons first aired in 1989, a world of difficult-to-program VCRs and appointment TV when even cable was in its relative infancy. Taking the place of binging was channel surfing, idly flipping through channels until something caught your eye. Which is exactly what Groening was looking for. He didn't want to use the standard color palette of cartoons and instead looked for something that would stand out and grab the viewer's attention in the hopes that they would stop and watch. One of the animators suggested the now iconic yellow, and it turned out to be exactly what he was looking for. Now, after 33 seasons, it's actually hard to imagine a world without The Simpsons. It would take about 10 days just to watch all of the episodes already in existence. There are fans who were born after they'll say the show stopped being cool. Now, animation is neither cheap nor easy, but after 33 years, there's plenty of Springfield and its colorful residents in place, and even voicing multiple characters, that they can still knock out their parts in the course of a day, reducing the stress of the show, allowing it to keep its core cast easier than a live-action show. And not to mention, the characters never age. But all things come to an end, and one day that's going to be true of The Simpsons. While showrunner Al Jean points out that people were eulogizing the decline of The Simpsons as early as Season 2, when the time comes to pack it in, he has a plan. With the eternally ageless characters, Jean envisions the final scene being The Simpsons preparing to go to a Christmas pageant that would lead into the Christmas pageant that opened the first episode, putting The Simpsons into an infinite loop. Then, The Simpsons would truly be never-ending. Early on, The Simpsons tried to push things like "Eat my shorts," "Don't have a cow, man," and "Ay caramba" as catchphrases for the show. But they had no hope of overshadowing one that doesn't even appear in any Simpsons script. The phrase is so popular that this might be the best-known piece of trivia in Simpsons lore. Of course, we're talking about Homer Simpson's annoyed grunt, better known as "Doh! Doh!"
We should really put that in the corner.
That was pretty good. Even if you don't watch The Simpsons, you know "Doh!" In the scripts, it's denoted as annoyed grunt, which voice actor Dan Castellaneta interpreted as a variation of the annoyed affectation used by Jimmy Finlayson in the Laurel and Hardy films to replace swear words forbidden by the Hays Code. Finlayson's elongated "doh" was shortened to the more staccato "doh" to match the animation, and a legend was born. While the word doesn't appear in Simpsons scripts, as of 2001, it does appear in the dictionary. A lot of artistic work goes into filling out the world of a show, animated or otherwise. There are thousands of details that can go unnoticed unless they weren't there or done poorly. It's tough sometimes doing a job that no one notices unless you do it wrong. However, being under the radar does give the artists freedom to slip little in-jokes and references that sometimes only their fellow artists would notice. Until people start to. One of the most notorious is the use of the Wilhelm scream that sound designers began inserting into movies. CalArts is the source of a lot of the artists working in entertainment and the bulk of the staff at Pixar. One of the more recognizable ways that CalArts grads nod to their alma mater is references to Room A113, the graphic design and character animation classroom. A113 permeates Pixar movies as well as in The Simpsons episodes, where more than a few CalArts grads are employed. Itchy and Scratchy are the subversive show within the initially subversive show that unleashes no end of violence enacted by Itchy the Mouse and Scratchy the Cat. While it might seem like the duo are a reference to popular cat and mouse cartoon stars Tom and Jerry, it turns out they're just one in a long line of cat versus mouse cartoons that also inspired Itchy and Scratchy. For David Silverman, that would be Catnip and Herman, one of the first cartoons hounded for its level of violence, while Groening cites Pixie Dixie and Mr. Jinx, where the mice Pixie and Dixie torment Mr. Jinx, the cat ineptly trying to hunt them. While Bart and Lisa constantly have to defend the show from censors and outraged parents, including their own mom, the show would never fly in the real world, at least as a kid's cartoon. Now, we all know Homer's main gig as a safety inspector for Sector 7G at the Springfield nuclear power plant. It's a job that he is terrible at and frequently gets fired from. Thanks to Mr. Burns' complete lack of interest in basically everyone, he's able to get his old job back really easily. In the meantime, he's had an impressive list of side hustles and new careers. Despite this mobility in the workforce, Homer has remained in the lower end of the middle class. Though, at one point, he was given a stake in the Denver Broncos, which, if he held on to it in the Manning era, would have made him a decent amount of money. But Homer does have a history of mismanaging his assets. Now, one of the more notable anecdotes about the inspiration for some of the more iconic Simpsons characters revolves around Jeffrey Albertson, best known as Comic Book Guy. While Groening did partially base Comic Book Guy on his own Comic Book Guy from a Muck Bookshop, he said this when asked about him. "I can't tell you how many times people have come up to me and said, 'I know who you based that comic book guy on. It's that comic book guy right down the block.' And I have to tell them, no, it's every comic book store guy in America." That same duality extends to Springfield itself. Groening has said that he's based the family on his own, with all the names in place: his father Homer, his mother Marge, and his sisters Lisa and Maggie, though the similarities fall off fast from there. Springfield is a town 2 hours south from his native Portland. Leave It to Beaver was also set in a city called Springfield, and he would imagine that it was the Springfield near him. Knowing that Springfield is a common name, he hoped to create that impression with The Simpsons. While they've been cagey about where their Springfield is, the season 11 episode Behind the Laughter, which parodied the Behind the Music series, stated that the show's Springfield was in northern Kentucky. Homer and Marge are undoubtedly in love, but their relationship is hardly goals. Mostly, that's down to Homer's impulsive actions, which are often selfish and rarely take into account Marge's feelings until it's generally too late. Homer's actions have put a strain on their relationship a number of times, putting their marriage in crisis. But it's only in one of the flash-forward episodes where the enduring couple have actually separated significantly. Despite that, the couple has been married 3 times. The first time was their less-than-romantic Vegas pairing conducted at a roadside chapel. When Kirk Van Houten finds himself separated from his wife, Homer becomes terrified that his own marriage is headed towards the same fate. So he arranges a proper marriage for them, complete with the divorce he filed so that it would be a real wedding. The couple would later find out that Reverend Lovejoy had lost his license to conduct marriages, and they were still divorced, so the couple was forced to marry a 3rd time.
Matt Groening? What's he doing in a museum? He can barely draw. No!
While The Simpsons predates the modern internet, it has embraced the internet in its long run. When Homer becomes a viral sensation with his carnival game victory dance in Homer and Ned's Hail Mary Pass, the 8th episode of the 16th season, it's hosted on Comic Book Guy's website Dorks Gone Wild, which, for a time, was a real website they set up that contained the embarrassing content and wallpapers that visitors could download. The episode also contained Homer's AOL email address, which was maintained for a while by a Simpsons writer, until the volume became too much to keep up with. The address was allowed to lapse, and later was taken up by hackers that would send malware to fans who tried to reach Homer now. This is also the episode where Comic Book Guy's ordinary name was revealed as a bit of a troll by head writer Al Jean. Groening had intended for Comic Book Guy's name to be Lewis Lane, something that had haunted him, but he wasn't around when Jeffrey Albertson was chosen. Theoretically, The Simpsons could just go on forever, like Mickey Mouse, since the characters are all animated anyway. The last episode of The Simpsons could be broadcasted into the void at the heat death of the universe. Existence could end with a